to our first ever Keep the Seek, the day-to-day edition, right? This is like a special edition. We'll see how many of these we put out, but we just felt in this whole...
the age of quarantine.
Everything that we're in, we're just looking for as many ways to stay connected as possible. And, one of the things on my heart with this, with ministry, with my faith, is I feel that it needs some real work in the arena of actually teaching us the how to do it. We seem to talk a lot. We hear sermons. We go to Bible studies. We seem to have a lot of conversations, at least in my experience in church, about what you should do.
Yes.
But when it comes to actually what I call learning practiced religion.
Best practices.
Just process, steps, how to do it. Let's practice our religion. So that's what we're looking to do here.
Yes.
We're wanting to take it down into the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day. So on Sunday we got our big ideals. Well, here we are on whatever day this is, and we're into the week, and we're looking around at some of the stuff that's going on. That's not only got to do with just our nation, our society, but specifically involves our faith as well.
Yes,
and sort of kind of bringing together these current events and this sort of what is happening right now, and bigger than that, what should be doing about it?
The effect of it for us, and do we have a responsibility?
Yeah. The reality of our faith in today's world is something that I think is really important to us, particularly since we work with youth who are, we've already seen quite a few. Hopefully you're watching right now. Go to college, Yes. So the reality of how should I live out my faith, day to day, what is that actually supposed to look like is something that I think, would you say it is important to you? I know it's near and dear to my heart.
It is, absolutely, yes. And I think that part of what's also important is that we are able to share that and to teach particularly our young people what it means to be Christian and to live your life with Christian values as best as you can.
Yeah, and I know for myself, having done that for years now, it has kind of shown a light in a weak spot in our faith, for me anyways, and that is that we tend to talk about what we should do, and we do less of how to do it, the actual step by step.
We have sort of clear expectations of how we're meant to live our lives.
But how do you get there?
Exactly.
Right, yeah. So that's why we're calling it kind of the day-to-day living of our faith,
Right.
In other words, like, how do we go about practicing those ideals? And so we're going to look at some current events, and we're going to actually ask some of these sort of self-reflection questions where while we may talk around it, what we always want to come back to is that our faith in mature religion is bringing you back to what should I do? We see Christ do this through the gospel over and over. He always turns the lesson back around from pointing the finger about what they should do, and it always comes back to what I should do. So anyways, go ahead and kick us off with our topic, and we're going to see if we can pull this off.
Okay, let's give it a good try here. Okay, so the current event that caught our eye recently is a situation out of Tampa Bay, Florida. There was a pastor there with a church by the name the River, and their senior pastor there is a gentleman named Pastor Brown.
Okay.
He decided to go against guidelines and the suggestions that have been set forth by the CDC and by the president to isolate, to not congregate more than 10 people, and to institute that 6 foot.
Do you know how many met? In the church?
Well,
I've seen different numbers.
Right. The article that I read mentioned that there were hundreds.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the exact number is. Okay. I didn't find that in the article that I read, but it did mention that the congregants numbered in the hundreds.
Right.
They were... there's a picture that was uploaded that shows
they're close.
They're not instituting the 6 foot rule. So they basically that church and their pastor disregarded any of the guidelines that have been set so far due to the outbreak.
And like you said, you tend to read the news a little more than me, but I have gotten the sense that they're not the only ones. They're not the only churches that are still meeting.
No,
it's not, there are actually quite a few that we're seeing.
You and I have
in the
seen
news.
some here locally as we drive by them that they're holding services. So, ultimately, what happened was yesterday, Pastor Brown was actually arrested.
Wow.
Because of his decision to run his church and things as business as usual. He was arrested and he was charged with unlawful assembly and the violation of a public health emergency order.
Okay.
Now, he was arrested and detained only about 40 to 45 minutes and was released. But it definitely has brought up questions. You and I immediately got to talking about it, about where we're at with that in our faith. It struck up a lot of conversation between, how we feel about the separation of church and state.
Sure.
So we've had a couple of different takes on it so far, and we thought that it would be really interesting to bring it to you guys so that we could dissect this and discuss it and try to understand maybe a little better why he made that decision and, what repercussions, if any, as we can see there are.
And just to kind of lay out the format here, if we do any more of these, keep the seat day-to-day editions, this is not us teaching. We're not coming with a prepared lesson.
No,
this is just a conversation starter, right? The goal here is that we would teach each other,
right?
Much like John Wesley when he started this denomination. They had bands that got together. They didn't have an elder. They didn't have a pastor. They didn't have people who had gone to seminary and had all the answers. They figured it out together. Much like the very first Christians. Back in when it
just
first started.
Reasoning out.
So that's what this is.
Together.
We're going to be honest about what we think.
Yes.
We're on a journey. We might be wrong. We've been wrong before.
Yes.
So, what we want to know is what y'all think.
Sure.
That's the main thing.
I would love to just have a conversation about this. And even if it's not a perspective that I agree with, really, I think part of what you and I love to do is just learn, if there's something that we haven't thought about, an idea that's new to us, we love to discover things that we haven't known yet. And I think that we all have the ability to gift that to each other if we would slow down enough and not have those walls just to try to hear and understand what's coming from a perspective that we probably innately wouldn't go to ourselves.
Seeing it from that other point of view can be very enlightening if we're willing to
lay down
that a little bit, and so that's what we're wanting to do. I do want to set just some quick guidelines. What we're hoping is that you all will respond to this with either your comments in the the comment area, and we can have a discussion that way, or perhaps you would record your own quick webcam answer, and you could upload that and put the link in the comments where we could watch it. And I'm not.
That'd be great.
I don't know how all this stuff works that great, but that's our idea. I do want to ask that we stay respectful.
Absolutely.
We're not bringing up even the story of a pastor who got arrested to shame, to condemn.
Not the purpose.
We're just using it as a self-reflection and to ask, what do we think? Where is the right truth here?
Right.
Scripture doesn't talk about coronavirus.
It doesn't.
It doesn't ever mention coronavirus. So, but nonetheless, what we love about it is it applies. If we can take time to interpret it and to think about it, we usually find answers there. So anyway, so to bring it back around, so what is the kind of the main question we're asking here?
So really what we are wondering as these events have unfolded, number one is how... was that the right thing to do?
To meet?
To meet.
Okay.
Do we feel as though Pastor Brown
or any church that's meeting.
Is it the wise thing to do? Is it the right thing to do?
Right. What does God want us to do? Right.
Right.
I mean, we can't know for sure, but we can sense it and share.
We can, try to search out what that truth might be. You know, how does God want us to navigate this situation that very few, if any of us, have ever lived through?
Right.
What is his plan, and how do we find out what it is, and how do we live it out?
And this is hopefully one of the ways we find it.
Hopefully.
Right
yeah, that would be great.
So what do you think is the Christian response to meeting as a group right now? Do you resent that we can't? Do you agree with it? Why not? That's what we want to hear. Right. I know that for you and myself, we've kind of had a journey. First, we were pretty cynical about this whole thing.
Yes.
And then we began to be convicted about, that this isn't just about me. And by not meeting, I'm protecting those at risk.
Right.
So that's kind of where we're at, but we want to know where you are. And then I think our second question was to just ask, what should our response to the arrest be? Right. So this has gone all the way. They're not just meeting. We also now have a pastor in our country arrested
for
meeting as a church.
Yes.
That's pretty crazy. I didn't think that was going to happen.
Yes. Even now, I'm not really sure what to think of that.
Yes.
I don't feel as though it should be encouraged.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts there? And not only what are your thoughts, but what is the Christian response? If you feel that the government has gone too far in this regard, as a Christian, though, what do we do with that?
Right.
I mean, this goes back to
I think it's an important question.
MLK, of other civil rights.
Absolutely.
How do we do that?
Immediately, my flag went up, and I was like, "Whoa!" What's the government doing, stepping into a church?
Yeah.
There's separation there for a reason.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that's a whole other conversation.
Sure, but that's what we're hoping. We're not gonna get into it now because we hope to get into it together in the collective format. But I think our last point was that our last question. So should we meet? How do you feel we should respond to that a pastor was arrested? And then the third one is something I noticed, and you can tell me what you think, that there are many times that religion, unfortunately, instead of unifying, can be used, whether consciously or not, ends up being used to divide and to create what we call otherness, to create hated others.
Right.
And I'll just be honest. I feel this pastor is doing this. He may not agree with me, and that's fine. But what was the article you read? What was the words he used? He said something.
Yes. I believe it was during the live stream where he expressed his discontent with churches that are not meeting physically.
Okay.
I believe the direct quote, his definition of churches who aren't, are pansies.
Yeah, that's right. That was it. Pansies. So, and I know some other stuff that he said that really draws a line, grouping the opposite political party of his into definitely hated others, feared about them.
Yes, there was some of that language used.
And so, that's kind of our third point, I think, is that when religion is used to create otherness, or a lot of times it's very seductive and it's very subversive. It happens without us realizing it. Mm-hmm. And so what we don't want to do is turn this guy into another.
Sure.
And hate and judge.
Right. And just perpetuate that,
So I think that's our last question is just to simply ask, who are my others? So I'm recognizing that here is a pastor that I feel is, unfortunately using Christianity to create otherness. But instead of just judging him, while I was listening to him on his live stream, I recognized I was doing that. He was another. I was so dismissive of anything he had to say without ever having heard him before.
Right.
And I took a second and I just centered myself and I said, he doesn't have to be your friend, but pretend he's somebody you know. Just pretend he's somebody you know. Now listen to him with those ears. And it really made a difference. I did not end up
agreeing maybe with
him.
everything.
He still said some things that were very concerning to me, but I will say that there immediately began to be a human connection there. Not that he felt it, but on my end, I realized
you never know.
I realized, in a subtle way, I had dehumanized him.
Yes.
And there might be people out there like, yeah, we should. I don't know. I don't think so. And so that's our last question. Who are my others? So that was one of mine. Is this guy? What would you say? Who would be one of your others? Just as we wrap up here, if you were to self-reflect.
My others would be hate groups.
Okay.
That's a big one. Hate groups are just, I don't get them. I don't understand them. And with hate groups, I don't want to,
Right.
like I don't even want to hear it. I just feel that I'm just going to leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So hate groups.
Definitely hate groups.
You got a real thing of otherness there, right?
Oh,
and it's understandable.
That's
it's
what it's built on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But so maybe we'll carry that further at another time. How do we deal with that? How does a Christian work to not have hated others, but at the same time dealing with wrong behavior?
Right.
But anyway, so pick any of those you want to pick from. Comment on it here.
Let us know how
what
you
are your
feel.
thoughts. So here we're almost done. Let's not do the thing where we avoid saying what we think. So
right.
So Sandy,
we'll be
my
honest.
beautiful bride, why don't you take 2 minutes, hit whatever of these topics you want. What are your thoughts?
I think in the end, or with the information that we have now, I've come to a place where, like you said, I don't want to dehumanize or demonize this pastor. I'm sure that he felt that this was his Christian duty and that he was doing the right thing. So. And I respect that. I am able to look at him and say he has the right. To meet, just as an adult man, he has the right to make those decisions and he has the right to hold those beliefs. And so there's something about that I feel that it's important to respect. At the same time, I also can't agree with all of the, obviously the outbreak that we're dealing with. I can't in good faith say that I felt that his decision is a decision that I could support.
Okay.
I think that it does come back to what you kind of started with by saying that as a Christian, it is important for me right now to not do maybe the things that I feel I have the right to do right now.
Okay.
It's true that I have the right.
Okay.
But I don't think that my desires should be so much above those of somebody else that I would continue to increase the chances of spreading the disease.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, I'm kind of a both sides. I understand why the government had to step in. I can't agree with the decision that the pastor made, but at the same time, he made a comment that churches are just as essential. It's essential for churches to be open just as much as a Walmart. And, I believe that he feels that way, and I can understand why he feels that way.
So definitely a struggle between no clear-cut opinion yet. So you're definitely still processing.
Right.
On the journey.
Trying to understand where both sides were coming from and why they made those decisions.
How dare you pick one side
I can't.
and stay there.
No, I don't know.
It's the American way.
No, I don't like that. No,
I'm sorry.
I think we could probably practice that a little bit, is trying to find the validity on both sides. We won't agree on everything.
I think that's great.
But we can at least, if we can try to understand maybe what motivates somebody else, we don't have to agree with it. But if we can just get into their headspace, I think that it helps us to not dehumanize them. Yeah, definitely. So that's my take on it. That's where I'm at right now. I don't subscribe to the idea that you have to pick one side or the other.
Okay.
So I'm trying very much to just kind of stay balanced and just work with the facts as we learn them.
Yeah.
But what do you think?
Well, obviously, these are kind of any one of these questions, whether we should meet, how do I feel about the arrest, the whole idea of otherness. I could go on and on and on. But
of course,
I'm going to not do that right now. I think for myself, if I had to just boil it down, as far as the first part of the questions, just this, I don't think we should be meeting.
Okay.
I have been convicted of that. It's not just about me. And if I continue to meet in large groups and don't respect this social distancing, while I might end up being fine, I am putting other people at risk. And that got to me. That turned my heart on it. At first, I was really bitter about it, but that turned my heart on that.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that comes to my mind in the realm of, do we have the right to meet? Is this really wrong that he was arrested? I mean, it definitely is surreal, and I'm not sure what I think about it 100%, but I will. There was one time I read a quote that said, don't talk to me about your civil rights unless you're also willing to include your civil responsibilities in the same conversation. And that's probably the best way to describe what I'm feeling. I think that it's important,
I think that's a great point,
to keep our rights. I'm very much I get, I go on my long-winded rants about how since various times through my life, I've seen our civil liberties, our civil rights be ebbed away. I care a lot about that. Nonetheless, I care just as much about being responsible for this thing we call life in a community. So the only other thing for me would be that I think, I really do think this thing about otherness is important to soak on. I think that right now it is really easy. We started to do it. I did it myself. I reacted to this story and made this guy and all his followers an other.
Right.
And it's something that I don't really have the answers, but I know that I feel that this is an arena that if we could explore it and become better at it, that would be something that our faith could really impact the world around us. If we could begin to teach how to not be relativistic and just say any behavior goes, anything's all right, let yourself be walked over, or just anything like that.
Can't agree with that.
There is stuff that is wrong, but nonetheless, how can we remain? How can we continue to deal with those behaviors that we don't like without dehumanizing those who are doing it? How can we still stay connected and remain, how can we unify? How can we stop making it us versus them, and how can we unify? So anyways, I think that is something that's definitely worth exploring, and I hope y'all will and share your thoughts.
Please do.
So, this has been, I'm Joseph Leggett.
I'm
Sandy Leggett. This has been Keep the Seek Day-to-Day Edition. Please comment. If you have something you want to say that's too long for the YouTube comments, you can send us an email at keeptheseek@gmail.com.
Right.
And, we really want to hear from you. So I hope you're having a good day. Hopefully this relieves some of the coronavirus boredom of being at home.
I mean, you're going to be on your phone flipping through Instagram anyway.
Sure.
So take a few minutes and just let us take that spot there for a little bit.
Tell us what you think. Tell us what you don't agree with us about, or just your thoughts, your feelings. We want to engage in hearing from you.
Let's talk about it.
All right.
So thank you all for spending your time with us. We do encourage you to keep the faith, keep the hope.
And of course, keep the seek.
Day to day living.